Amina returned home earlier than usual and discovered her twin children, Kwame and Kana, naked in bed. However, the horrifying truth behind the scenes left everyone screaming in terror. Amina had always borne the heavy responsibilities of being a mother, wife, and businesswoman in Nairobi. Her days at the bustling market were long and exhausting, leaving her with little rest as she managed her fabric shop and cared for her customers. But tonight felt different. An unsettling atmosphere hung in the humid Nairobi air, prompting her to decide to go home earlier than usual. The fatigue from dealing with customers and the chaotic traffic of Nairobi weighed heavily on her weary legs. As she pushed open the metal gate, the compound greeted her with an unusual silence, starkly different from the normal chaos of generators humming and her children playing outside. The usual waiting for her was replaced by an eerie quietness. Upon entering her home, her sister Nia, the ever-reliable helper who had moved from the village to live with her and the children, stood waiting by the stairs. Nia's face was pale, and her hand shook nervously. "Amina, there's something you need to know," Nia began, her voice low and trembling. Amina dropped her bag by the stairs, a frown creasing her brow as she took off her shoes to relieve her feet from the stress of her high heels. "What is it? What happened?" she asked, though deep down, she feared the answer. Nia hesitated, glancing over her shoulder to ensure no one else was around. Her whisper was barely audible. "I was downstairs preparing lunch when I heard noises from Kwame's room. I went upstairs, and when I opened the door, Kwame wasn't wearing any clothes. Kana was there. Kana got up from the bed and ran out as soon as I opened the door." Amina stared at her sister, her mind struggling to process what she had just heard. It felt as though the floor beneath her had shifted, and she was about to fall through it. "Are you sure, Nia? Are you really sure of what you're saying?" Amina asked, her voice betraying her. Nia was shocked that Amina did not believe her. With frustration, she responded, "I'm sure. I know what I saw, and I would never lie about something so serious." Amina's heart pounded in her chest. She had no strength left in her legs to stand and sat down on the stairs. Nia had always been trustworthy, but the image she painted of her innocent children involved in something so inappropriate was too much to bear. For a moment, Amina just stood there, staring at her sister, trying to make sense of it all. Amina thought to herself, "Kwame and Kana are only 9 years old. They are twins and curious, but could this really be possible? No, it's not possible." Amina got up and walked upstairs, finding her children on the couch sitting together. As soon as the twins saw their mother, they jumped up and hugged her. For a moment, she almost forgot what her sister had told her about the twins. In a steady voice, Amina said, "We need to talk." Nia told her something, and Amina needed to know the truth. The twins looked up at her, their wide eyes full of innocence. "What did she say?" Kwame asked, his voice small but curious. Kana, Amina's husband, asked nervously. "She told me that something happened in Kwame's room today when both of you were together." Amina responded. "She said you were naked." The room was silent for a long time. Then Kwame shook his head and said, "No, Mama, that's a lie. We didn't do anything." His sister agreed. "Amina, Nia is lying," Kwame and Kana said with conviction and certainty, with no guilt in their eyes. Amina was confused. She even threatened the children, trying to force them to tell the truth, but they were firm. "Mom, we are telling the truth. Nothing happened. Nia is lying." Amina stood there, looking at her children. They seemed so confident in their innocence, but Nia wasn't the kind of person to make up stories like this. She had no reason to lie. That night, Amina lay awake in bed, her mind racing. She hadn't told her husband yet. Whatever it was, Amina was determined to find out. As the days went by, Amina carried on as if nothing had happened. She thought Kwame and Kana were always so close since birth. It wasn't unusual for them to be together at all times. She tried to push aside the unease that lingered in the back of her mind. A few weeks later, as Amina was cleaning Kwame's room, her eyes wandered to his drawer. Something inside her pulled her toward it. She slowly opened the drawer and began organizing the clothes inside. She saw something very shocking, a pair of Kwame's underwear folded neatly among Kana's shirts. Amina stared at it, her breath catching in her throat, her mind racing. How did Kwame's underwear end up here, she wondered. She called out to Kana so loudly that he ran to his room. "What's wrong?" he asked nervously. Amina held up the underwear, her hand trembling slightly. "Why is this here?" she demanded, her voice mixed with disbelief. Kwame's eyes widened, more confusion washing over his face. "I don't know, Mama. I swear I don't know how that got there." "Do you expect me to believe that lie?" Amina said angrily, her voice trembling with anger and confusion. "I don't know," Kwame cried, his voice cracking. Maybe Nia put it there by accident when she was folding our clothes. Amina's heart pounded in her chest as she studied her son's face, searching for any signs of deceit. His eyes were full of fear, his body trembling. Amina rushed back to her room and collapsed onto her bed, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was looming over her family. When Benga returned from work, Amina told him everything about the underwear. Benga listened quietly, his brow furrowed. "That's ridiculous," he said, his anger flaring in his voice. "They're just children, Amina. You're overthinking this." Benga walked away from his wife. Amina was confused by her husband's response. A few days later, Amina decided to leave work early again. When she got home, the house was very silent. She dropped her bag on the chair and called out to Kwame and Kana, but there was no response. Her heart raced as she felt an eerie, unsettling quietness. She walked through the living room, her eyes moving everywhere to find her children, but they were nowhere to be seen. She went upstairs, walking quietly as her heart raced. She noticed that Kwame's bedroom door was slightly open. Amina froze for a moment, fear rushing through her body. She slowly pushed the door open. What she saw made her stomach turn. Kwame and Kana, her beautiful, innocent children, were lying on the bed completely naked, their bodies intertwined in a way that sent a shockwave through Amina's entire being. For a second, she couldn't breathe or speak, her mind racing to make sense of the image in front of her. The moment the children saw her, they jumped up, terrified. Their faces turned pale, eyes wide in panic. "What the hell are you doing?" Amina screamed, tears filling Kana's eyes and Kwame's lips shaking. "We didn't do anything, Mama," Kwame pleaded, his voice shaking as he fumbled to cover himself. Amina's legs trembled as she stepped closer, her eyes locked on her children. "Don't lie to me. Tell me the truth, Mama," she sobbed, pulling her knees to her chest. "We didn't do anything bad." Amina's rage faltered as she looked at her babies, terrified and shaking. She couldn't take it anymore and turned to storm out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Later that evening, after the children were in bed, Amina finally told Benga. She didn't want to, but this was too serious to ignore. Benga listened with a deep frown on his face, clenching his fist and pacing the room. "I can't believe it," he muttered, shaking his head. "This needs to stop," he screamed. Amina started crying, not knowing what to do. Benga went to his children's rooms to confront them. The children kept saying they didn't do anything wrong. Benga was even more confused. He told them that it was not right for them to be naked and holding each other in bed. Amina couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was wrong. As she stood there, the thought of installing a hidden camera without telling her husband came to her mind. She was determined to find out what was going on in her home and with her children. She installed cameras to cover every corner of their home without telling anyone. One day, as she headed upstairs, she could hear some sounds. She quietly made her way upstairs and climbed the last step of the stairs. The bedroom door creaked open slightly, and she saw her husband stepping out of the room, his shirt half buttoned. Benga froze as he saw Amina, his eyes wide with surprise. "Babe, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice unsteady. Amina looked at her husband, his unkempt appearance, his trousers wrinkled and his belt loosely hanging from his belly, signaled that something was terribly wrong. She stepped closer, unable to take her eyes off his rumpled clothes. Benga shifted uncomfortably. I came home early too. I wanted to check on the kids, just to see if they were doing anything crazy." Amina rushed into the children's room to check on them. Kina was reading on her bed while Kwame was in his room playing his game. The children looked staged and unreal. Amina knew they were pretending. She just couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Suspecting that Amina wasn't buying his story, Benga asked, "Is everything okay, babe?" Amina nodded. Benga held her hands and walked her away from the children's room. He tried to lighten her mood by talking about his day at work and offering to make dinner, but Amina remained very silent. When everyone had gone to bed, Amina opened the camera app to view the footage. As she watched the events that unfolded that day, she was in shock, her stomach sinking as chills ran down her spine. Amina couldn't breathe, her entire body trembling with tears streaming down her face. She had seen enough. She had all the evidence she needed. Amina couldn't sleep. She sat on the couch in the living room, staring blankly at her phone, her thoughts trapped in an endless loop of anger, pain, and disbelief. The next morning, Nia woke up and came downstairs, seeing her sister sitting on the couch. "Good morning, sister," she said, but Amina ignored her. Nia went over to make sure her sister was fine. "Are you all right, sister? Can you hear me?" Amina slowly turned to Nia and yelled, "Don't touch me." Benga walked in just in time. "What's going on here?" he asked. Amina stood up, her fist clenched tightly. She moved closer to Benga with unrestrained anger. "I will show you what's wrong." She grabbed her phone and opened the camera app for them to watch. The video showed Benga walking into Nia's room. They both undressed and laid on the bed, their bodies intertwined. Then, from a different camera angle, the twins were seen tiptoeing to Nia's room door to peek through the crack and watch everything that unfolded in the room. They all watched the children's innocent faces staring at something they couldn't possibly understand. Kwame and Kana, standing outside the door watching what happened next, ripped through Amina's heart. Unaware of the gravity of what they had seen, they imitated the scene each time there was no one watching by taking off their clothes and lying down together in the bed. Kana even mimicked the sounds she had heard Nia make. They immediately knew that the children were simply copying what they had seen their father and auntie do. When the video ended, Benga and Nia stood frozen with their mouths wide open for a moment. No one spoke. Amina's hand twitched at her side, her fingers curling into a tight fist. Her heart pounded in her chest, her blood boiling with rage, betrayal, and disgust. With a sudden fierce movement, Amina stepped forward and slapped Nia hard across the face. Nia staggered back, tears instantly welling up in her eyes. "How could you?" Amina's voice trembled with fury, her eyes burning with tears. "I gave you everything. I paid you to take care of my children, provide a place to stay, and feed you. And this is how you repay me? By sleeping with my husband, betraying your own sister?" Nia stood numb as tears streamed down her face. "Sister, Amina, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she stammered. Benga, shocked beyond words, immediately spoke up. "Calm down, Amina, please, it was a mistake. Let's not make this worse than it already is." "What makes it worse?" Amina screamed at him, her eyes narrowing with fury. "Benga, you betrayed me with my own sister?" Without warning, Amina slapped him across the face harder than she had slapped. "Nia." Benga stumbled back, one hand holding his cheek. His face twisted, but he didn't say anything, as there was nothing he could say to fix what he had done. Nia sobbed, her voice shaky as she tried to step closer, kneeling before Amina. "Sister, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." But Amina's heart was hardened. There was no forgiveness left to give. "Pack your things and get out of my house," she said. Benga stepped close to Nia, trying to help her up. "Amina," he yelled. "Don't you dare touch her." Amina left them and walked upstairs. The commotion woke the twins up. Kwame and Kana had been quiet and confused by the tension they heard but didn't fully understand what was going on. Amina looked at them, her heart aching for the innocence they had lost. "I need to talk to you about what happened," she said to them. The children looked at her, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. "What you saw happen between Daddy and Auntie Nia was wrong. I want you to know that you should never ever copy that again, okay?" "Are we in trouble?" they asked. "No, you are not in trouble, but don't lay down without clothes again with your brother," Amina responded. The children listened to her and agreed not to do that again. Amina began the process of divorce. There was no going back from this. The marriage had been destroyed beyond repair. Nia called numerous times to apologize, but Amina refused to allow her back into her life. Nia called their mother to intervene, but Amina informed their mother that she had forgiven Nia and Benga, but she would never allow people who destroyed her life to come back into it. Amina's focus was now on her children and her business.